Good morning. I'm Kathryn Zox. I am your social worker with the microphone, and you are listening to the Kathryn Zox Show on VoiceAmericaVariety.com and World Talk Radio. Joining me this morning is Rachel Kodanaz. Rachel is a motivational speaker, author, grief consultant, and facilitator. Her new book, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is Living with Loss, One Day at a Time. And Rachel provides encouragement to those in her book, as well as a motivational speaker, to those who are suffering a loss. She's a columnist for Living with Loss magazine and has appeared on Good Morning America. And when we're talking about loss, we're talking about death, we're talking about grief, we're talking about a very taboo subject, particularly in our country, in our culture. So welcome to the show. Nice to have you on this morning, Rachel.
Thank you, and good morning, and thanks for having me.
It is great to have you. And as I said, death, grief, even just loss, is taboo for most Americans. We don't want to talk about that stuff. We only want to talk about the good stuff and move on. And obviously, your book, your work, what you do, and I didn't mention that you have also the co-founder of the Heartlight Center, which is a non-profit facility in Denver, designed to help people deal with personal grief and educate the community about the grieving process. Okay, so you're doing some pretty tough stuff there, pretty tough work. What motivated you? Why did you begin doing this?
Well, the interesting part of it is I am by profession business. I have a business background, business degree from college, and I was working in Fortune 100 companies with the goal of breaking the glass ceiling, as most women say that they're going to be the first to break the glass ceiling. And then in 1992, when my husband was 32, my daughter was 2, he walked out of work and he just dropped in the parking lot. It was arrhythmia. We had run 8 miles that day during lunchtime, and so it shook my world. And when I was able to get my feet back on the ground, I chose to change my outlook on life and where I was going to go in my career. And I chose to take on the whole grief and loss and use my business background that I had to help corporations and grievers get through such, as you called it, a taboo subject.
Rachel, but you just said something. You said got your feet back on the ground. And obviously it sounds like you had to do it yourself, and it was kind of a stumbling block. It wasn't easy because, how'd you, 32 years old, no one expects your 32-year-old husband to drop dead. The expectation is not there, when you're maybe 62 or 72. So it must have been, I want to talk about it a little bit because there's all kinds of stuff that goes with that. And you have a 2-year-old daughter. I want to talk about your response, obviously, and what happened to you.
Well, I'm originally from the East Coast, and I was in Kansas City working for Sprint at the time. This is pre-cellular. This is when they were truly long distance and the AT&T breakup divestiture. And when he passed, I had no clue what was going on. I want to say for 2 solid years, although I maintained my position at Sprint, and I worked really hard, and I was able somewhat to focus on that. But then I was single mom, and at age 32, you really don't put your life together in the sense, like as you said, that something like this would happen. So there was very little life insurance money, and I was naive enough to think that his paycheck would still go in the bank, and of course it didn't. And so I just really stumbled through the first couple of years. I try to hang my hat on anything that I could find. I'm pretty athletic, so I took on his goal of doing the Ironman. I just did everything and anything I could to just fall asleep and wake up in the morning and maintain a household.
Rachel, did you get support from either family or friends or people at work? And then how did you relate to your 2-year-old daughter when her dad dies at age 32? What kind of support did you get? Did people want to talk about it? Because my experience is everybody usually wants to say, well, you have to go on with your life and you're young, and I can think of all the kind of platitudes that you might have had to endure.
Well, I have a wonderful family. No one lived where I lived, so there was a distance between where my physical support would be. And remember, this is pre-cell, pre-internet, so it's phone calls. It wasn't just that I can just text somebody and say I'm having a really bad day today. This was years ago. My family did the best that they can, and I love them dearly for everything that they did do, but what they didn't do for me was bring him back, and of course that's what I wanted, but they also couldn't truly relate to me. I call it in my book as well that there's 2 tiers of grievers. The first tier are those who grieve in the loss of someone close, and the second tier grievers are those who are grieving for the griever. And my family, even though they lost their son-in-law and their brother-in-law, they were really grieving for me, trying to figure out what was I going to do next. And I had no clue what I wanted to do next. But on the other hand, I didn't want to release my husband from my heart. So part of that means if I am going to move on and do something different, I really had to release him, and I had to work on that in my own time.
Did you feel guilty? I mean, you talk about survivor's guilt, and I know, I mean, that's something that's discussed even in a lot of the textbooks and stuff, but did you feel that? Like you mentioned, if you let go of him, then it's like feeling guilty that I am deserting him, or I should still be grieving, or all of those kinds of feelings.
Ironically enough, I never had survivor's grief back then, but at her my daughter's high school graduation, I was sitting at the graduation with my new in-laws on my left and my deceased husband's in-laws his parents on my right. So I've got two sets of in-laws, and I just started crying, and my friends were giving me so much crap that, Rachel, it's a high school graduation. What are we doing here? But what it was is that was what, if we want to call it survivor's guilt, it was the point where I just was, oh my goodness, I got to have this wonderful life with this child and he didn't. So it was really that I really felt bad for him that he wasn't there. Even though I remarried and, moving and doing my life, I just can't believe that he wasn't there to see his precious little baby graduate.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really important point, because I think sometimes one feels like you go through the grieving process and you go on with your life in a positive way and all that you kind of leave things behind you, but that maybe at each important perhaps event in one's life, it returns, the feelings return, like you're describing, high school graduation. Maybe you'll feel the same way when your daughter has children, and it kind of continues through your life, but you emotionally, do you handle it in a different way? You're better, you're more prepared.
But I don't consider it reappearing. I consider it a constant. It's a constant thing that happens. It's just through everything I do. I mean, even on my book, my middle name, I changed my middle name, to when I remarried, to my daughter, and my middle name to what my married name was for my husband that passed away. I just continue. I think it's all a continuation of life. I don't think I started here, ended here, started over again, because what I am and what I do, I'm shaped by the experience that I went through, and I want to bring Rod, who is my deceased husband, through the journey with me forever. And I'm very fortunate because the people around me are embracing that.
Rachel, how long were you married to Rod, and then how long have you been married to your second husband?
So 3.5 years I was with Rod and 16 years with my husband, my current husband, who has embraced everything I do just so wonderfully. It's just it's a wonder. Like right now I'm actually in the East Coast and I'm on a book tour, and he just supports everything that I do. It's wonderful.
What does he do?
He's in information technology, so he's in large businesses, international business.
So something very different than what you do, but
actually, that's what I came from. I mean, I came from IT, information technology, and Fortune 100 companies. That's really what my background is before I started doing this. But when I started supporting corporate America on grief in the workplace, because I knew how to help the coworkers and the management, and wrote a program, I gave my chance to still be in the corporate environment.
What's interesting, and I think it's unique about your book and your philosophy and what you speak about and everything, is this grief in the workplace. So I want to focus on that a little bit, because grief in the workplace involves and not only grief for the person, perhaps someone who in the workplace dies, or you are empathizing, or you are working with a coworker who's a significant person in their life has died. So grief in the workplace, there are a lot of issues surrounding it, I guess, and how not only employees but employers handle grief in the workplace. So let's talk about that.
Well, that's a great. This is one of my just near and dear to my heart. So when I came back to work, I had a large staff of all men because I was very technical, and me coming back, losing my husband, and having a 2-year-old baby, their lives changed forever. No matter what I did as a manager, they knew that as best that I could, I wasn't really looking out for their best interests anymore because I was on a survival mode. Although I maintained a professionalism, they knew it changed. So from the second a grieving person returns to work, so in this case, such as myself, it changed my coworkers and management's life forever. I believe in my heart that there is a lot of support for employees because you could do it through not only your health insurance and mental health insurance, but you could also get support through grief groups, et cetera, and even, in the employee assistance program. But when it goes to coworkers and managers and even HR, there wasn't really anything out there. They didn't know what to do. There's a traditional bereavement leave policy, but that's a policy. It's not a law, and people can work around that. And while society thinks that's the biggest issue of grief in the workplace, it really is, that's not the biggest. The biggest is it might take, the timeline of going through grief and you're still working it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could even be more than that based on the dysfunctionality of the family. So what I try to do is train the coworkers, the management, and HR of what do you do when there is a death of an employee, when a grieving employee returns to work, whether it's anticipatory loss, whether it is deployment, any type of loss. How do you work with that person and educate them on how to not just be sympathetic, but understand that no two people's journeys are the same?
Rachel, do you have to connect that helping people to deal with their loss, the person who has sustained the loss, and you said deployment, it can be having to do with the military, lots of things. Do you have to connect that to the bottom line for heads of companies? I mean, if you work with big companies or even small companies, that, if you address this issue and if you have training programs beforehand, not necessarily after the fact, that it's going to affect your bottom line in a positive way. You're going to have coworkers who work better, who do better for the company. Is that part of it?
So in some of my benefits when I am marketing to companies, I share with them, it's a great question by the way, what I share with them is that we all know that one of the most costly piece of employer-employment relationship is turnover. Because turnover creates, the training, the disruption, et cetera. So trying to avoid the turnover and making it work. And plus, if you are, as an employer, if you're loyal to your grieving employee, they're going to be loyal back, which means that relationship is going to be a much stronger relationship. So that's going to help on the bottom line. Also, if you help the grieving work group, you're going to have a little bit of dysfunctionality is not the right word, but you're going to have a little bit of it just is the work's going to be off a little bit for a while people are dancing around and trying to figure out how to do this. It gets a little unproductive. So getting that productivity back on track is, again, a cost saver because we can't you can't fire the employee that is going through the loss. So I feel that anything that you do to smooth the waters, it will only make life better because people will see it as a company that is really a caring company and they'll want to be part of the team.
Yeah, and with the aging population, and you have many more older people, baby boomers in the workforce. I mean, I think this is kind of right on target. I mean, it's really this topic is necessary to address. Have you seen any major changes? Because you're talking about, well, like when this happened to you when your husband died and you were 32 years old, 16 years ago, from 16 years until now, or is this just? Or are we just beginning to address this topic of grief in the workplace?
I'm going to answer that both because I do think we have a long way to go, but I also think that we're getting there. I believe that bringing in the Family Leave Act and putting grief into that, I think that is a great start to what companies realize they have to do and not just want to do, that they have to do. And then the other piece is, if you look at the bereavement leave, which is my biggest, if I will tell you that 1 out of every 5 emails I get or questions I get, it's about bereavement leave. But the bereavement leave, adding in the domestic partner and adding in some other distant relatives into that mix tells me that we are starting to look, we as a society are starting to look at grief. My big one that I've got an aha going right now is this book it just came out, Living with Loss One Day at a Time, and it's a very different approach. You've seen it. It's a very upbeat, motivational. I will tell you that I was under the rug for years. I'm not going to deny that grief is the hardest thing you will ever have to go through in your life. But I also feel that we have a lot of life to live. So with me transferring into this book and the way I'm doing it, when I wanted to share it, that we're coming a long way in both companies and in society. I'm speaking this week in the Upper East Side, Barnes & Noble, and I think that that's a topic that we, as you said at the very beginning of our talk, that do. The fact that I'm going to be able to go there and do that, we would not have been able to do that a couple of years ago. So I think it's baby steps, but we're getting there.
Yeah, and I think you just said something. The definition of family has expanded, which is a good thing. Partnerships are different, marriages, partners, whatever, extended family, and we include that in the whole definition of loss and grief, which I think is important. Can you give us an example? Because, listeners like to hear specific examples of where you've worked with somebody, or individual and or a company, and it has a really positive outcome, either for the company or either for a family or just the individual.
So I feel that any time that I get to walk in the door that it's a successful event, because that means everybody around me has offered their heart or their wherewithal to say, okay, I would like to do something. So I think taking any kind of step is there's always a great outcome. I really feel that, because that means you're willing and you're opening up your heart, and you're scared, but you're still doing something. But I've had some specifics. Many companies, and suicide is big that you get brought into, and I'm going to stay away from that for a little bit because it's a death. But I've had, for example, going into a company where there's been, as simple as this may sound, there's 2 pregnant women, and one of the women has lost her baby at month 8. And out of the group comes back where one person they want to have a shower for, and another person is mourning the loss of a life that they never really even met. I chose that one because it's something that is, we think, oh, the baby wasn't born yet, there's no death, but there truly is. And all those coworkers that are around it are now tiptoeing, and it becomes this happy, that was supposed to be happy, becomes such a stressful thing for the workplace. So there's those types of examples where you can come in and you could share ideas of how to help the surviving pregnant person and the surviving work group, of how you could still talk about what you've got pending, but you also can't run away from this person that has lost their baby. And I try to teach them and help them. You've got to recognize this person that that had this situation. So that's a positive. There's when any time an employee can talk in a group, it becomes a positive. I think anytime anybody can talk about their loss is a positive.
Yeah, and that brings us up to, and I want to talk about Camp Widow, which is just an amazing project that has been your baby. I guess I'd speak of it in that way. But before we get into that, I just have one last question about the work situation, because there has to be a balance as well. And when you provide these workshops for people to be able to express their grief in a healthy way, it also prevents people from in a work situation where the grief and the loss becomes overwhelming, and that's all people talk about and all they feel, and then they're not doing their work. So that's another piece of it. So you need the outlet, but you need it it has to be done in an appropriate, I guess you would say, venue within a work environment.
There definitely has to be balance, and I think that's where the management and the human resources come in. Sometimes the manager is a little too close, so the HR person has to come in. But most companies, and I don't want to say the smaller ones, but most of the larger ones have EAPs, so employee assistance programs, and they can sometimes, if the budget allows it, but a lot of times the budget doesn't, they can come in and play just come in for the middle level. Sometimes when I come in, what happens is I'll do my presentation the first couple of days of there's a loss, and everybody's numb and nobody can do anything. They're just so numb. What I really like is to follow up the next week or 2 weeks later, because I'm an innocent bystander. If people want to complain about the way their manager is handling it, or praise the way the manager is handling it, or if they want to talk about coworkers, I'm just an innocent bystander. So they can open up, and as soon as they talk, it's just like everything in life. When we get it off our chest, we feel better, and sometimes they just need an outlet. So I like doing that so I can provide the outlet, because they don't like to take a risk with their managers, because then they get a ding in and they believe they get a ding in their professionalism.
Right, yeah, let's talk about Camp Widow.
Camp
Widow.
So I am on the board of Soaring Spirits Loss Foundation, and our wonderful executive director, Michelle Neff Hernandez, came up with this idea when she was widowed. Her husband was hit from behind he was riding a bicycle in California, and he died instantly, and she had 3 kids, and she just felt like it would be just so great to be able to, she had lovely sisters similar to me, but it would be great to be connected to people that have similar situations. So she came up with this concept of a weekend-long event called Camp Widow, and we just finished our 7th camp in San Diego this past summer, and it is widows and widowers, and they just show up on Friday morning, and we get there usually Thursday night. We have it in Tampa and San Diego, and we're actually going to do one in Canada next spring. And what we do is you come up, and then all day Friday we have workshops, and some of them are sudden loss, and some of them are whether you're an anticipatory loss and you've been a caregiver and how you've been handling that. And then we try to make sure that we pair people, just have all kinds of classes, so to speak, or workshops, whether it is based on a sexual orientation or whether it's based on we try to stay away from religion, but with you were widowed, you weren't married, you were just engaged, and whether it is military, there's always something that you can latch on to the first day so you can at least meet some people. And then we just go into a weekend long of events, including message release and workshops, and we even do a formal event so everybody can get dressed up, and usually a 5K or a walk. So it's just a weekend. Think of campus for kids, but instead of arts and crafts, we're doing just upbeat type of presentations. Upbeat as much as you can in death and widowhood.
Yeah, that is so fantastic. And nobody else has ever done this? Yeah, it is fascinating because, first of all, as a social worker, I find support groups, really, really work the best. Individual therapy is important, family therapy is important, but when you get people in support groups like you're describing, no matter what it is, it has, you're talking about grief and loss and widowhood, but it really does work, and you find people who have. You're saying people who not only have suffered a loss, but you get really specific. Like you may have gay couples, you may have do you separate it by age? Older people. You talk about anticipatory loss or sudden loss, and that's very different. So, you get real specific in terms of who people can connect with.
We try to do that the first day. The first day we try to do all types of breakout sessions, and the whole purpose is it's so that you come to camp, because most people come by themselves. So you find someone in the first 2 hours that you're at camp, like we do a new camp orientation, and we just try to get campers that first morning within the first 2 hours, they can choose whatever one they want to go to. Well, they can choose the whole weekend what they want to go to, but specifically at the very beginning, we try to get them so that they have somebody that they've connected to on whatever level. We're all connected because we're widowers, but just to have the next step of it. And it's friends for life. It's amazing. You can get on social media and see what everybody's doing, because now there's regional groups that have taken off. When I first heard, I was asked to speak at it. That's how I found out about it. Michelle found me on the net. And I went out there and I told her I'm a lifer. I've been at 7 camps and I'm going to all 3 in 2014.
But also, Rachel, you're a lifer, but so everybody else can be a lifer, because when you talk about when you lost your husband or when he died, it was 16 years ago, and now people can continue. Once you meet at these events, you've got the internet, you continue just to be connected with each other, right? I imagine. Do you have a lot of people get married?
Yeah, it's interesting because my new husband, he comes out to the San Diego one with me, and we do a remarriage presentation. And I'm open to anybody asking any kind of questions, because I was one that didn't want to remarry because I lost the love of my life, my first love and all. And so we do get that. We don't get a lot. If they meet at camp, I don't track them to know that. I know for a fact that there was one couple, because they came back to tell everybody about it, that they had met at camp.
Yeah, so I'm sure you probably get more and more stories like that.
I'm sure, yeah, and I ran a support group. Thousands of widows had gone through at Heartland Center, and I had a lot of marriages and relationships from that. And it's interesting because, when they stop coming, I kind of keep in touch with them, or they'll show up every once in a while, but then I get the happy email, oh my gosh, we got married. And it's just great. It's just
which is a great story. We have a few minutes left, so one last question about your daughter, because, she lost her father. And one other thing, this is just something that, before you answer that one, just, in the beginning, I think you used the word past. And I've always wondered, I've always thought when people use the word past, that was kind of like avoiding, they died. That, that was kind of like a euphemism for dying. But apparently, you're not someone who is living in euphemisms. So, but you did use that term. Is that something that I need to
No, I would have to tell you honestly that I jump all over. It's interesting that you picked up on that. I'm really all over. Like sometimes I say pass, sometimes he died, sometimes I don't have a word. It's what rolled off my mouth at that particular time. I'll be honest with you. I probably less saying he's dead because it sounds so permanent. Because in my heart, I'm not very spiritual, but in my heart, he died, yes, but he's still we are who we are because of that loss. So there's a part of him that's still with us. So I guess I might, if you were really to dissect it, that I stay away from dead, but I don't do it on purpose.
Yeah, well, I liked your definition or your description, I guess you would say, because he does live on in you and your daughter, which is my last question. How is she doing?
Well, she's great, and this book has changed everything because she's now, she's just graduated college and she's actually living in Manhattan, and she got really into me writing this book and pushing me and because she feels like she's a part of it now. She is him 1,000%. It's so true when people talk about what's the difference between DNA and nature and how a kid grows up. She is him, and so you just know that it's inside her, and she just is really excited about what I'm doing and just how upbeat the book was, and she wanted to be part of the editing and the book design, and so it's wonderful. And so is his family. His family has been absolutely wonderful.
So it's still a family affair. It is a family affair. It
is a family affair, which creates 21 nieces and nephews for me.
Well, we have to say goodbye. We have our next guest who's ready to come on the show. But, Rachel, it has really been great talking to you, and I want you to Living with Loss, your new book, Kodanaz, Rachel Kodanaz, Living with Loss, One Day at a Time, website that listeners can go to. You can buy the bookstore. You can buy the bookstore probably, but you can buy the book at bookstores everywhere online. And what website if we want to keep in touch with you?
It's RachelKodanaz.com. I'm going to spell it. So it's www.RachelKodanaz.com.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathryn, for having me on.
Yep. Have a great day.